you'll keep living your life thinking that's a 10 out of 10, but actually you're a 5 out of 10. And there's a real 10 out of 10 out there that you could be experiencing and enjoying for the rest of your life.
There's the redirection. I think there's a bigger path for all of us. And what you were saying, there's still going to be a beautiful path. Even if you're walking along one that doesn't quite work out, there's probably something even better waiting for you.
I know that you think that this is the end of the story for you, that life can never be how you want it to be.
But these people who have failed their exam, the truth is that they are incredible doctors. They've committed all those clinical skills to long-term memory. They're going to be more useful for teaching other doctors. There's a humbling effect that comes with that.
What we really seem to want in life is just for everything to go perfectly, for everything to go to plan. But as you're saying, what kind of person do you end up being if you go through life where everything's perfect? You end up being a pretty fragile, unskilled, probably entitled and spoiled person. I think we really go about our lives each day believing, I just want everything to work for me. But as you're saying, when things don't work for you, it's when you get to see your stuff, when you get to see what you're made of. And for me, I think it's when I actually get to impress myself. It was a plot twist in the way that I tried to write the story, but it wasn't a loss. It turns out it was actually a gain disguised as a loss.
Hello, my beautiful friends. My name is Dr. Beck.
And I am Christine Barker, and this is Am I Doing It Wrong? A podcast for doctors by doctors. Every week on the pod, we'll be bringing you conversations which shine light in dark places, normalise the doctor journey, ease unnecessary suffering, and give you actionable steps to thrive in all facets of your life. So grab a cuppa and get cozy for this week's episode of Am I Doing It Wrong? The podcast for doctors by doctors. Hello, our beautiful friends, our Dr. Humans. Welcome to another episode of the Poddy, and it's going to be a beautiful one for you, especially if you're going through something hard right now, if you've had a loss, if you didn't get something you wanted, whether you had a vision for yourself that's fallen through, whether you've lost a person, a relationship recently, or whether you've got something going on with your health as well. If any of that resonates with you right now, then this episode is going to make you feel so much better. And Beck, you had a story from recent times that I think a lot of our listeners will resonate with. Tell us about it.
The reason I think it will really resonate and we wanted to bring it to the Poddy is, I actually haven't been through this exact scenario myself as I heard this kind of happening in front of me. But when I heard it happening, it just hit me in the gut. I was like, oh, that hurts so much. It feels like such a familiar human experience. And I can see so many places in my life and just with all my loved ones around me, all my colleagues, everyone who have been through the same thing. And I just think with this episode, we can relieve so much unnecessary suffering from such a common human experience. But in particular, for doctors, I think because of our culture and the way that the healthcare system is set up and the expectations that we have of ourselves as doctors and how our careers should go, this is extremely relevant and creates a lot of suffering for us. I host weekly peer support meetings in an international forum, and we have a group of doctors come every week, different doctors each day. It's completely free, by the way. If you need peer support, then get into contact with me and I will send you the links for that. But most of the doctors are American. And one of the more junior doctors or residents, or maybe they just finished med school, it's open to med students as well, they'd come in and they'd said they were devastated because they hadn't matched to their specialty program. And it was such a heartfelt, painful story to listen to. You could hear as they were speaking how choked up they were about it. And they really felt like their life had been broken, something had gone terribly wrong, and that life wasn't going to be the way they wanted it to be now. And so quickly, without a beat, of course, after holding space and letting this person fully talk, there were 2 or 3 other consultants that swept in, some of them at the very ends of their careers. It was actually quite a nice spread. There were consultants who were kind of early career, mid-career and late career who each swept in independently and said to this person, oh, no. You're misunderstanding this situation, like respectfully and with love and compassion. You just don't see what I see. You just don't know what I already know, because I was in the same situation where I didn't get that exact job I wanted. I didn't get that exact specialty match. Basically, I didn't get what I wanted at one of those points in my medical career that felt critical. Right? And for us in Australia, we have a different process, of course. And there's this whole process of getting through into your training, your advanced training, your subspecialty, or whatever it is. And particularly for us in Australia, I know it can be really painful to not get the place you wanted in the specialty in the state or area that you want. And for me, it was one of the things that was helping me decide what specialty I wanted to do and didn't want to do, because I was like, I want to do this specialty, but it's really important to me that I live here. And so I know that factors in a lot for people too, because it changes your whole lifestyle and it changes how much you're able to connect with your family and so on. But it doesn't end after consultancy either. There are all these other positions and all these other sort of extracurricular things we want to do and extra education things that we want to do. And when we feel like we have this plan for our life and we don't get all those pieces despite working so hard, this is the thing that when I try and talk about the coaching that I do for doctors, it's a very different kind of coaching than coaching for the rest of the world in general, because coaching for the rest of the world in general can often center around needing to work harder and motivate yourself and use discipline and be consistent. Not a problem for doctors. I think some of the hardest thing for doctors is we got hard work, we got discipline, we got consistency, we've got sacrifice and delayed gratification in the bag. It is like our default mode. But for doctors, it's about whether all of that actually translates into the result we want. And when it doesn't, it is so painful, because you're sitting here like, I've done everything right and I've done everything I can do. Sitting there in that moment of, there's actually nothing more I could have done here. And yet I still didn't create the result that I want. That is hard. So with this painful story, the other consultants swept in and they said, wait a second, my friend, I know that you think that this is the end of the story for you, that life can never be how you want it to be. And also, I just want to offer my experience and perspective, which was that not only was I okay and my story didn't turn into a bad story, but they all said spontaneously that it was the best thing for them to end up in the place, to not get into that specialty they wanted and to end up in the place they were now for reasons. They all had different reasons. A bit like one of them was mentioning what I mentioned before, which was the place they got to live because of the specialty that they are now doing, the hours that they get to work or the flexibility of their work, all these kinds of things like this that we're not considering at the time. You know, we can get so fixated on the one thing that we want. And they just came through with all these extra perspectives about why that loss, that thing we perceived as a massive loss at that time, and their story going wrong, these three people just came in and said, no, it was a plot twist in the way that I tried to write the story, but it wasn't a loss. It turns out it was actually a gain disguised as a loss. So that is what Christy and I want to talk about today, both in medicine, but also in life in general, because I'm sure we've all experienced it. As you listen to the story, you've probably got a little bag of experiences in your life where you realize you've experienced that really intense pain and feeling like everything's going wrong, feeling like the world's happened to you, feeling like your life won't recover, it won't be as good anymore because of what you've lost. And Christine and I, because of the mindset work, the personal development work, the spiritual work that we've done over time, we have been able to now capture this little misunderstanding in real time so we can stop the suffering early, the unnecessary suffering early. Loss is always going to hurt a little bit. That's just normal. That's not going away. But it's all the unnecessary suffering that gets stacked on top. And I call this in Dare Darling in our coaching, I call it the end of story error, or false finality as a thought error, which is when something bad happens and we think, that's it, this is how my story is ending and it's now a bad story. That's a misunderstanding. When we can recognize that that's just a thought error, that it's not true, that A, it's the end of the story, and that B, that it's a bad part of the story, that it's not leading to something better. When we can recognize that error in our thinking, then we can go on to not only stop the suffering at first, but also make lemonade out of the situation, as opposed to squeezing the lemon juice in this wound or amputation that it can feel like in your life sometimes. So without further ado, we wanted to give you some examples, not just within medicine, that we can hopefully help you then catch in advance and give you different perspectives on a different way to think that doesn't just cause massive pain and suffering, but also in the rest of life as well, because we've captured this in so many places in our life, haven't we, Christine? Can you kick us off with an example?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. And I love the example that you just brought. And I was thinking as you were talking about, although we're chatting to you at the moment, and those consultants or kind of people who are more advanced in their career were telling this person, oh, listen, nothing's going wrong. This is actually going to be great. It's just going to take time to figure it out. It's so hard to receive when you're in that place. So I guess I just want to acknowledge that as you're listening, just if this is the kind of place you're at, just obviously stay open, because it is hard to receive. But yeah, no matter what part of your life, and I can think of so many examples, but I think even in terms of your sense of self, so you were talking about, I guess, feeling like a particular path, like extrinsic things outside of yourself weren't going to be the way they were. And that is something you have to grieve. That is a loss. But what I found, obviously with the benefit of hindsight, is that when these things happen, you actually develop a different relationship with yourself and an ability to trust yourself to get through things. And that risk of sounding a bit cliched, but the example that comes to mind, probably the biggest loss I've had in my adult life outside of bereavements, which that is just part of life, I guess. But in terms of relationships, like I was in a relationship for 8 years and it ended quite abruptly and to my surprise. And I really, at that time, my perception was my whole reality had shattered. You know, like everything I thought was going to happen in the future, everything I thought was real was no longer real. And these things happen. But what was really interesting was all these unexpected things from inside myself that happened. So at that time, I was having a lot of like fears around maybe turning up online, doing the things that I wanted to do with my platform. I was learning how to sing and perform in front of others, and that was terrifying. You know, I was like, singing in the shower was fine, but singing in front of people was hard. And there was all this stuff that really scared me. And it was really interesting how, as that reality collapsed around me, I no longer feared things that used to scare me, because I was just like, what's the worst that can happen now? Do you know what I mean? It was almost like an acceleration of personal development to have an earth-shattering event. And now, obviously, looking back, like I wouldn't change a single thing. Like obviously at the time you'd be like, oh, I wish I want to put this back together or whatever. But, you know, I have a new relationship now and that's wonderful. But everything about my life is different now. And I really do believe that none of the goodness, or the goodness would probably just be different, wouldn't it? But I certainly opened up. And I know that even people around me were saying to me after that sort of shattering of reality, they were saying things like, oh my God, you look so happy. And I'm in the middle of it. I'm grieving, right? I'm like, what? Something just happened to me. They were like, oh, we haven't seen you this happy in years. It was a really strange time. And all that was happening was I just lost the fear. I lost the barriers to living a fuller life because I just wasn't scared anymore. And so I think it's really interesting as well because, yeah, I think there's the redirection. You know, I think there's a bigger path for all of us. And what you were saying there is still going to be a beautiful path, even if you're walking along one that doesn't quite work out. There's probably something even better waiting for you. And I think you will be guided towards it. But I also think in these times where you feel like you've lost a lot, it's like an instant gain of something. It hurts whilst it's happening.
I really like that, because the place that you're sort of going here with this story is what you have to gain in terms of the person that you have to become to survive that loss. And it's a very intangible place to take it. I guess I was thinking like there's a very obvious thing of an opportunity cost of I didn't get to go down this path, but now I get to go down this path. Like not having that space created the opportunity for this other option to fill the space. What you've said is even more profound, because it's like what we really seem to want in life is just for everything to go perfectly, for everything to go to plan. But as you're saying, what kind of person do you end up being if you go through life where everything's perfect? You end up being a pretty fragile, unskilled, probably entitled and spoiled person. Actually, if everything just constantly works out for you, and you probably lack empathy, lack compassion, I think we really go about our lives each day believing, I just want everything to work for me. But as you're saying, when things don't work for you, it's when you get to see your stuff, when you get to see what you're made of. And for me, I think it's when I actually get to impress myself, when I see myself handle hard things well. Like, it's not impressive for me to see myself handle everything going well. Like, it's nice. You get that little like flip of like, oh yeah, that's good. Everything's working out. But it's not the same feeling of like, wow, look at me go. Look at me get back up. And like you said, the confidence of, oh my gosh, I can fall down and get up. Oh, and that's so much of what being unshakable is. Like, it's confidence isn't about becoming totally competent, especially for doctors who have the bar set up here for competence. It's like, you're not going to get to feel confident. That's your bar. But if you see yourself fall over and you see yourself get back up, and not only that, but get back up and thrive, that is what builds that unshakable confidence that we talk about. They're two really beautiful, different, even categories that we can give to you guys to think about when it comes to, okay, it feels like a loss right now, but what do I have to gain? One of them is the obvious thing of the opportunity cost. I didn't get thing A, so now there's space for thing B to come into my life. And thing B doesn't stand for like B plus, but thing B, think better, the better thing, the actual upgrade. Like, I think about this as like, when we like grasping and we hold on to what's good, we really hold on to what we think is good, we force it to stay in our life, we don't get the opportunity for great. And not to try and compare people, Christine, but I know that the relationship you have right now is off the charts incredible. And it's kind of like, like, if you held on to that good thing, you tried to fight to make that thing work, that, you know, as it turns out, it wasn't quite right. Not at the time, not with the circumstances, for whatever, it left your life. And now, only now, you can see, I have this great thing now that I could not have imagined. And then the second way is the way that it forces you to evolve. And I think we never opt into this work. If we could just have the path go perfectly, if we could just set our little plan, write our little story for ourselves and have us go along the story, we would do that. But I think the world knows that that's not really good for us. It's like giving the baby the ice cream every time it wants ice cream, and it never learns to become the person who can go without the ice cream.
Yeah, but also it's like a movie, isn't it? In terms of, you're the hero. We're all in our own movie and we're the hero in our own story. And there's no movie on planet Earth that you'd want to watch where everything was just plain sailing. It is more interesting to overcome things, but it also makes you more useful to other people. Like, I think about my ducklings, my doctor humans who are sitting their clinical exam, and I work with a lot of people who've maybe failed their clinical exam before and they're sitting there for the second or third time, and they inspire me daily, like how much they come at it, they work hard and everything. But if I even think about the whole reason that I'm doing that is because when I went through my clinical exam, even though I passed it, that was the hardest phase of my career. Like, it was just, everything was just hard at that time, and I barely made it through the exam. And from that place of finding something hard, even though I hadn't lost it, I'm now able to infuse that back in to help other people at this time. And although I didn't have that story where I failed the exam but these people who have failed their exam, the truth is that they are incredible doctors. They've committed all those clinical skills to long-term memory. They're going to be more useful for teaching other doctors. There's a humbling effect that comes with that, and they can then pass that on in all of their interactions with patients, other members of the team. There's something about that. There's a magic to that. Once they get to the other side of that exam, there's this beautiful integration of something pretty special from having gone through that whole journey. It's beautiful to watch and tricky to see in the moment.
Yeah, really tricky to see. And that's really the point of this episode, because I think we all know that this resonates with you, that you've had these experiences as a human, let alone as a doctor, and therefore somebody who, you try and write your story in advance. So you have an idea of how you want your story to go, and you're quite passionate and convicted that your story should go that way. So I'd be very surprised if any of you guys don't resonate with this experience. But what we really want to offer you here is to stop just living that in retrospect and to start bringing this awareness into the moment that it happens, and feel the loss, experience the grief of not getting what you want. Do that process. And also just invite this other part of you, remembering this episode, remember enough stories here. We'll give you a couple more stories before we go, but stick around to use these examples that we give you here, because when you have these stories that can be attached to them, and therefore you can more easily recognize where you've got a gain just dressed up, disguised as a loss in your life, then you have a better opportunity or better positioned to actually bring this awareness into the very moment and stop the unnecessary suffering. So 2 things: allow the pain of the loss. You're a human. It's okay to feel that loss. And that's why we have this whole process of grief that we all appreciate and agree with. And grief doesn't just apply to death. Grief applies to you losing these ideas that you've imagined for how your life would be, and ideas about the kind of person that you are and how your life will go. Grieve that. And also just invite this other part of you in that understands there's more to this story. This isn't the end of the story. And for me to say right now that this is all bad, that this is simply a loss, that there's nothing to gain here, is probably not true. And actually what might be happening is that you're experiencing this loss and the world is forcing this thing out of your life that's good. It's good. Like, we all agree it's good. It could be nice. But sometimes it happens to you so that you can actually create space for what you're meant for, which is the great thing to come. And I don't think that's a particularly woo concept. I think what's true is we all have a sense of what we want in life and what's important to us. And as much as doctors, we try and like fit the mold, and we consciously have been told all this time, this is how you should live life and this is what's good in life. I think those things that we actually want, that even though we can't consciously hear them, they're still there in us. Like, they're there and they're oozing out of us. As much as we try and fight to mute them and muffle them, they're oozing out of us. And so that desire that you have inside of you and the preferences that you want, I think they come out in how, like, little moments of decisions that you make, or like ways that perhaps you self-sabotage something that you don't actually really want. You know, say you've, again, subconsciously, you might have like self-sabotaged this relationship with this person, or this like job application, or because you're not being your authentic real self and actually expressing your desires in the job application for that leadership role or whatever it is, or putting in, I don't know, that gelling with a real estate agent to get that house or that practice location. I think that oozes out of you, the lack of authenticity, but also the desire for something else. And so that's how I think about how what's true for you and what's right for you can come out, even if you're trying to resist it. I know it's not an easy thing, as Christine said at the start, to think, how is this maybe a positive thing for me? But it's not really about spinning it into a total positive, as much as it's about recognizing that just like it's ludicrous to say it's a total positive, everything's all fantastic and good, it's also ludicrous to say this is a total negative. There's nothing good here. And that's a really good place for you to start when you're in so much pain, to be like, wait a minute, it's probably pretty unlikely that this is just all bad. It's not really how the world works. I've got a few like lighthearted examples just to lighten the mood right now, to bleach the mood. So I moved back to Tasmania from Melbourne recently, and I had to change hairdressers. And I had this hairdresser in Melbourne that I just loved, just went every week, got the same every week. I went every whatever quarter, got the same thing done. Happy as Larry, just like churning along with my little system that worked. Moved to Tasmania, I had to find a new hairdresser. I found a wonderful hairdresser whom I loved. But then she went to do nursing from her heart and soul, which was the right thing for her, but it was not a good thing for me because she was my fantastic hairdresser. And anyway, I have then had to, I think I've changed hairdressers like 3 or 4 times since. One hairdresser like over bleached my hair and broke it all off. And so I had to leave her. And then the next hairdresser, I went to their practice and she was awesome. I was so happy. And then she got pregnant and shut down her practice. So I had to move again. And I was like, oh my goodness, maybe I should consider this as a me thing, guys. Why do my hairdressers always lose me? Am I really annoying at the hairdresser? But most recently, just like a couple months ago, my hairdresser's just shutting down her practice. And so I needed to find somebody else to go to. She's going on maternity leave, I think. And it was a really annoying thing after that process of swapping and changing and swapping and changing. And every time you go to a hairdresser, you're not sure whether they're going to do something really wacky and weird with your hair, and you're going to regret it for the next 2 or 3 months and be like, I look ridiculous. So at that point of losing my last hairdresser again, I was probably a bit disappointed at first and like, oh, now I need to go to the trouble of finding a new person and blah, blah, blah. And perhaps the process of changing again if they're not quite right. But I went and had my hair done yesterday, and my hairdresser was incredible. She did my hair better than I've ever had it done before in terms of color and minimizing damage. She did it in, I swear it was like half the time. I'm probably exaggerating, maybe 2/3 of the time. And time is very important to me, guys. She got it done in no more than 2/3 of the normal time. And it didn't even cost as much. Like every single box ticked. And this is just a silly example of something that I couldn't have imagined. I thought I was happy with my last hairdresser. I thought this is really good. Everything's really good. I was happy. But I just wasn't aware that there was a level above that. For me personally, like everybody's different. Everybody wants different things. So the hairdresser I was with might have been great for somebody else. But I wasn't aware that there was great. I thought the good that I had was the ceiling. I thought that was the best. I was actually stoked with that hairdresser. I thought it was the best. And I just wasn't aware that there was something better out there for me. And that's one of the important concepts in this episode too. What you want the most right now, you probably think is the ceiling. You probably think is the 10 out of 10. But what if that's actually 5 out of 10? And because you haven't taken the time to go and explore other options, you'll keep living your life thinking that's a 10 out of 10, but actually you're a 5 out of 10. And there's a real 10 out of 10 out there that you could be experiencing and enjoying for the rest of your life. That's the point here. Just remember, you don't know everything. We don't know everything. We don't know what's really good. We don't really know what's great or the best. And we don't know how whatever happens to us right now is going to evolve over time and either create a new opportunity for us or, as Christine was talking about, force us to become a better version of ourselves. So with all that being said and leaving on a brighter, bleached note, we hope you guys have enjoyed this video, and we're sending so much love to you. If you are going through a loss right now, please take that grieving time and then also watch your mind for this end of story era. Watch your mind for when it tells you that life is over now. Life will never be as good as you imagined it. And this was the one and only way for you to be happy or live your best life. Because in most cases, what we found is that is a lie. If you can capture that lie in the moment, as true as it feels, then not only can you relieve the suffering that comes with that lie, but you can start opening up your eyes to what else is available to you, what gain there might be in this moment. We'll see you guys in our next one.
Bye.
I've been waiting all my life for something. I've been down the darkest roads and up in the clouds.